I must admit, I'm a biased, deluded Superman fan. I love him. I've believed in him since I saw Superman the movie as a young boy. Just imagine what it's like for a young boy to see this hero, bright blue, bright red popping on the screen, great John Williams music, great storytelling, gravitas with substance. It was a beautiful experience for me. But just because I am a biased, deluded Superman fan, it doesn't mean I don't know the challenges of making Superman in the modern day. Let's just put him down. It's very difficult for anyone to make Superman relatable to this jaded TikTok audience. It's very difficult. A guy with a red cape, tights, blue, S shield. It's very 1938, it's very 1948, 58, 68. It isn't very 2025. It's very, very challenging to make people go to the cinema, to give people a reason to go to the cinema to see this character. It's all right for you and me. We grew up with him. We watched Superman the movie, Lois and Clark, Smallville. We've now got Superman and Lois. But for people who are not us, not our generation, they just don't relate to Superman. So let's look at the two other movies that have come in the 21st century to see what they did to make Superman relatable. So first of all, let's look at the mixed response Superman Returns, which is called the boring Superman movie. Now, I can sit back and watch Superman Returns and enjoy it. But Superman Returns has many, many problems. That goddamn costume that Bryan Singer insisted on shrinks poor Brandon Routh. It makes him look shorter. It makes his frame look smaller. Imagine going through the pain and the suffering of working out, and then you can't even see how big the guy's chest is. The S shield's too small. It was all wrong. I don't necessarily hate the design, but yeah, it was the wrong costume. The other issue with Superman Returns, as I say, I enjoy it when I watch it, and it's a film of many beautiful shots, but it's also a film of many, many poor shots. The flying isn't great, mostly, but there are some cool flying sequences, but they're very few and far between. So the whole idea of Superman Returns is that Brandon Routh is Christopher Reeve's Superman. It's meant to be set in the Donnerverse. The problem is the Daily Planet doesn't look like Donner's Daily Planet. Metropolis doesn't look like Donner's Metropolis. There's an interesting moment when Clark returns to the Daily Planet for the first time in 5 years because he's been in outer space searching for Krypton. If you haven't seen the Return to Krypton deleted sequence, you should see it. Should have been a pre-credit sequence at the beginning of the film. Big mistake cutting that out. Just Warner Brothers being Warner Brothers. And even today, Singer claims it wasn't important. It was extremely important. And that film could have made Superman more relatable for new audiences. Yeah, so there's an interesting moment at the Daily Planet. So Clark finds that article from Lois Lane, Why the World Doesn't Need Superman. But the picture she's used, or the Daily Planet have used, is a picture of Brandon Routh in his new costume. Here's a problem. He went from the Christopher Reeve Superman to the Brandon Routh Superman, shooting off to space looking for Krypton for 5 years. So when did they take a picture of him in his new costume? Even Perry White, when he's getting all his reporters and workers to do different elements, different articles about Superman, he goes, is it a new costume? So basically that would have been a great opportunity to have either Brandon in the old Christopher Reeve costume or give us a Christopher Reeve Easter egg with a picture of Christopher Reeve in his costume. In terms of Brandon's costume, what you could have done is taken the Christopher Reeve costume and just slightly modernized it. That would have been so cool. So there were a lot of mistakes made with Superman Returns. There was very little action. That's why people called it the boring Superman movie. Bryan Singer opted for the emotion, the romance, the kind of this thing where Superman's come back, and the question is, do people need someone to catch them when they fall? Does Lois Lane still need Clark Kent, and especially Superman? She's with somebody else. You know, Richard Wyatt, played by James Marsden, actually a very good character in the film. But ultimately, the film only brought $400 million because it was a mixture of the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I can still go back and watch it and enjoy it every time. So, you know, if you're going to make a movie in the Donnerverse, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. At the time, I was very excited, but it didn't even feel like a Donnerverse movie. It was supposed to be a sequel to Superman 2. They never referenced the three villains from Krypton. I don't know what drugs Bryan Singer was doing at the time, but give me some of those, because I tell you what, that was no sequel to the Donnerverse. He messed up and then blamed his lead actor for the film not working. It had nothing to do with Brandon. Brandon was the best thing about that movie. You actually must have been sober when you cast Brandon Bryan, because you did a really, really good job. So that film was utterly inconsistent, problematic, but I still enjoy it, warts and all. And by the way, one of the other best things about the movie is the bloody soundtrack. It is amazing. It's done by John Ottman, who also edited the movie. It's one of the best CBM scores I've ever heard, and he deserved as good a movie as his score. So we go from Superman Returns in 2006. They planned a sequel straight away, even though Warner Brothers were not happy with the box office to that movie. We come back from the 2007-2008 Writers Guild of America strike. They decide we're not doing a sequel to that movie. Bryan Singer planned a Wrath of Khan sequel where Jason, Superman's son, is killed by Superman by mistake when Brainiac disguises himself as Superman's orphan son. And it's a very gripping moment. How will Richard Wyatt, how will Lois Lane react to Superman killing Jason by accident? It was going to be a big dark cliffhanger. It was going to be like X-Men 2. It would have been amazing, and we never got it. So after the Dark Knight trilogy, David S. Goyer had an idea. An alien invasion, First Contact, Superman movie. What could possibly go wrong? So Christopher Nolan was involved. They co-wrote the story. They brought in Zack Snyder to direct the movie, and they cast Henry Cavill as Superman. I'd never seen Henry in anything else, but he had beautiful looking eyes, beautiful looking cheekbones. He had beautiful wavy black hair. He looked like Superman. I was all for it. Amy Adams had been one of my favourite actors. I wasn't sure about, you know, casting such a famous actor, a great actor in that role, but she was a great Lois Lane. Her best performance as Lois Lane is actually in Man of Steel, and that's where she's the best written, because Goyer and Nolan wrote her. Terrio wrote her in Batman vs. Superman, and then Terrio wrote her again in Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut, where he made her a whimpering victim who was crying after losing Superman. I understand that she's going to be mourning, but Lois Lane is stronger than that. Read the Death of Superman comic. So we didn't get a very strong Lois in Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. I love the Snyderverse. I'm just being honest about my views. And so Man of Steel was a very interesting movie. It brought in $650 million globally. It addressed the boring Superman Returns movie. Lots of action, lots of destruction, but was it too much? Not for me. It was beautiful eye candy. But did the film have as much substance as excitement? For me, it did. Some people don't believe it had any substance. I think that's a lie. It's wrong. I think Goyer wrote a beautiful screenplay, and Goyer and Nolan wrote a beautiful story. It worked. And as I've said on this platform before, if Goyer and Nolan continued to write DCEU content and Snyder pointed the camera, we would have had something special. Snyder should direct and other people should write. That's what I've always said. But Snyder has visions, and he wants to basically create his own vision and story. He's an auteur, that's what he wants to do. That is his right. So, $650 million. Was that a success? Wasn't that a success? The debate goes on today. Well, it's nearly quadruple what Superman Returns made, 650 million. So why didn't Superman relate to more of the audience? Why did it not even make 700 million? It's an interesting question. Is it because Superman is not relatable? This is the second Superman movie in a row that makes well under $1 billion. Is there a reason for it? Is it Superman's fault, or is it the way the movie was made? I believe, and I've always believed, if not for Superman breaking Zod's neck and some other controversial factors within the movie, which I'm fine with, by the way, but, purists, Superman fans are not. I believe if those moments weren't in the movie, this movie would have at least made $800 to $1 billion. I think the 650 million pointed to an improvement, that this character is relatable. And I believe Man of Steel addressed many of the problems of Superman Returns. Zach and Chris and David made a movie for a jaded society, and it worked. This wasn't a cheesy Superman. This was a Superman put in a real scenario, in a real world, and it works. This isn't a darker Superman. Henry Cavill's Superman smiles. He's got this beautiful, wholesome relationship with his mother, Martha Kent, played wonderfully by Diane Lane. I always thought Annette O'Toole would always be my favourite Martha, but I think Diane Lane fucking killed it. Now, I don't know who James is going to cast for Superman Legacy, but wow, Diane Lane, that's a hard act to follow, and Costner as Jonathan Kent. But John Schneider from Smallville is still my favourite Jonathan Kent. It'd be very difficult to beat what that man did because he believed in what he was doing. I believe there was improvement with Man of Steel, from Superman Returns to Man of Steel, and there were signs that people were relating to Superman. But it was the controversial takes that gave the film a problem. It restricted the film in the box office. Parents weren't going to go and sit in the cinema while Lois Lane is talking about measuring dicks or seeing Superman break somebody's neck. And different issues, having Jonathan Kent saying, maybe it's okay if you let those kids die. Now, I understand what he's saying. He's just an overprotective father. But these are the reasons the film didn't jump from 650 to $1 billion. It took weeks and weeks and weeks in America to even hit 200 million. I remember the criticism of the slowness of the movie moving to 200 million in America. This was a Superman movie, and I pay attention to everything because I'm fucking obsessed with Superman. So I believe that Man of Steel is a great contemporary Superman movie. And if they just sacrificed their morals on some of the things they wanted to do, because I think they had the right idea. It looks beautiful. It looks how Superman should look. Cavill looks like how Superman should look on the big screen. The Superman action looks amazing. I don't think the flying is as, for me, I know it's beautiful CGI and everything, but I didn't like the flying in Returns, and I think still Dick Donner's flying in Superman the movie, even though it's a very old movie, the idea of the flying is still more realistic than we saw in Man of Steel or Superman Returns. But I love Man of Steel. It's actually a great contemporary take on Superman. And if they just chiseled away the rough edges of that film, Jonathan going after the dog in the tornado sequence, there was a few things that stopped that movie being more successful. So no, Man of Steel didn't only make 650 million because people weren't interested in Superman. Unfortunately, it was the movie that triggered some people. It's as simple as that. But for me, it's not a bad movie. So what are the challenges for James Gunn in making yet another contemporary Superman movie? And how do we attract the TikTok generation? Well, as I was pacing up and down my hallway prepping for this video, I don't write stuff down, it's all in my mind, and I just say what I want to say. I think that's the best way to do these videos. And I thought, wow, imagine a viral TikTok Superman Legacy campaign where you actually get actors as TikTok users seeing Superman flying and say, there's been a sighting of the new hero Superman and he's just saved this one and he's just done this. Just quick TikTok, viral TikTok marketing of someone on TikTok getting a glimpse of Superman. It would be so amazing and it would attract the TikTok generation. These are the kind of things we have to do because we have to convince the young generation that Superman Legacy is a film they must see, that this is a great hero, a great character, and they're going to have a good time watching him. So the challenges that James Gunn has is attracting a new generation to this character. Man of Steel nearly got there, but it did a couple of things that upset people and it didn't attract the younger generation. So a TikTok viral marketing campaign like that will be absolutely amazing. James Gunn has spoken a lot about the industry lately. He's spoken about the past 30 years and not being great. I've been saying the same thing. He's been saying right and proper and logical things why current CBMs are so bad. The third acts has something to do with it. But there's a deeper problem than that. When you're just making something on a conveyor belt and you're not really putting thought and depth into what you're doing, you have a problem. We're always going to have to go back to Superman the movie. Superman the movie had another director attached to it before Dick Donner. Dick Donner came on, hated what they'd done for the flying so far, and started from scratch, brought the best VFX people to create new techniques in VFX to make sure Superman flew beautifully. And to this day, the Superman flying looks amazing. Just go back and watch Superman chasing the missile. It's fucking amazing. It still looks like he's flying after it. It's the VFX and it's Christopher Reeve's body language, because Reeve was also a glider pilot. Reeve was amazing. Christopher Reeve was the best special effect Superman can have. And so if I was James Gunn, I wouldn't do as I'm told. I would start doing as much as I could in camera, like Dick Donner did. I don't care if it takes 3 to 5 years. Do as much as you can physically. Use the techniques of flying that Donner did and just touch it up with VFX. Make the most special looking movie you can make to attract the TikTok generation. But young people are not stupid. They also want substance. And how do we make Superman relatable? How do we give Superman and Lois and their relationship and this world more substance? Can a Superman movie in the 21st century work in the modern era? Can the Daily Planet itself work in the modern era where most people do their journalism via the internet? They don't even investigate anymore. They just sit there looking at facts and figures and find out what people have said on Twitter. That's not journalism, but that's what journalism is today. Would it be a better idea to predate Superman Legacy to the past? Maybe this is a 1940s Superman. Maybe this is a 1950s Superman. Would it be good if this was set in another century and in another decade? Set historically. Could it be better for the character? I think it would be better for the Daily Planet. The Daily Planet's romance is all about when it was created. It was created in the 40s, or the 50s, or whatever. No, I think Siegel and Schuster invented the Daily Planet themselves, but I think they called it the Daily Star, and it was the Superman radio show that coined the name The Daily Planet, a much better fictional newspaper name. So I think it is something for James Gunn to think about. Obviously, he's written his script and he's going to do what he's going to do. But it wouldn't surprise me if he set Superman Legacy in the past. And I personally think it could work. Because we've tried 2 Superman movies set in the present day. And there's been issues with that. Maybe making Superman a contemporary character isn't the right thing. And maybe if we put him where he belongs in the past, maybe that's a better idea. But believe you me, I understand the challenges that James Gunn's got here. So it's very, very difficult for James. He's taken on a mammoth task. So many people are relying on him. You know, geeks, nerds, Superman fans like me, we're all relying on him to make a great movie. Is James Gunn capable of doing this? I think James Gunn is more capable than people think. I think he's capable of giving us more than he has already. He's given us kind of a fans CBMs so far. Like fun, explosive, jokey, and it's all what's inside James Gunn. But he has to show us something else. And I believe he's capable of doing it if he tries. But he can't rush this movie. This movie can't be shot within 3 months while he's working on a computer with VFX artists. It can't be like Guardians of the Galaxy. There has to be, we need to go back to the old-fashioned techniques. We need miniatures. We need matte paintings. That's what we need to do. We need to go back to that way of making films. And as I say, CGI being used slightly just to touch these elements up. If James Gunn does this, we could get a very special Superman film. Unfortunately, I don't expect James Gunn, Warner Brothers, to want to do this because it's difficult to do that. It takes time, it's probably more expensive, you have to pay graphic designers. Of course, Hollywood used to have all these people, working on these projects as normal because there was no computer-generated images, CGI. The movie industry, Hollywood in particular, have become very, very lazy in how they make films. They start shooting a movie within 1.5, 2, 3 months. The movie's finished and you think, fucking hell, that was quick. It happened to me with Blue Beetle. 1 minute they started shooting, then they're just taking selfies in a local cafe, and all of a sudden they finish because most of that movie will be made on a computer and it will be edited on a computer as well. So it's basically wham bam, thank you ma'am, movie making. It's lazy, it's cheaper to make, and they hope that the profits will come in making cheap, lazy movies. But unless Hollywood resets their thinking in a lot of ways, in terms of what they're doing politically, in terms of how they make their movies, they're making their movies in a very lazy way. They need to look back to their forefathers and foremothers to see how things used to be done. I'm not saying do everything like the good old days, but I think the way Superman the movie was made was right. And oh boy, did they struggle to make that movie like that. It almost broke Dick Donner and his team. A small mention to Tom Mankiewicz, who rewrote the entirety of Superman the movie. Superman the movie was written by the Godfather author, Mario Puzo, and Robert Benton and the Newmans. Donner came in and said, nah, this is shit. So he brought in his good friend Tom Mankiewicz, who did a lot of rewrites at the time and didn't want to rewrite another movie. Dick turns up dressed as Superman, and he convinces him in the way Dick would. Dick was just such a delightful guy and full of life, and the friendship between him and Tom is beautiful. You should listen to their commentary on Superman the movie. It's on one of my Blu-rays, DVDs. I'm sure you've got a copy somewhere, or you could buy one or just go on YouTube or something. Amazing guys, and you could tell that they were great friends. Without Tom Mankiewicz writing that movie, we wouldn't have had the beautiful movie we had. I want to set you back to Superman the movie. There's a beautiful shot when Superman and Lois are about to fly off the balcony. Now, Superman grabs Lois's shoulders and they're about to fly. Now, that's a close-up. Now, I was just rewatching it and I forgot how they did it. And I thought, how are they going to do it when they cut to them flying? Is it going to look a bit, cheap and it's just a cut of them flying? But what's amazing is we go from the close-up of him holding her shoulders. Go and watch the movie. Then they edit and cut to a wide shot where they're coming off the balcony and flying. So it looks so natural. And that's the thing with the flying in Superman the movie. It looks natural. Of course you know how they did it. Of course you know they're not really flying. But when you actually watch it, it looks as real as can be. I know the movie's dated and some of the techniques, but just imagine shooting the flying the way Dick Donner did and touching it up with a little bit of CGI here and there. How amazing that would look. Now that's a Superman movie I'd be really excited about. But I am excited about Superman Legacy because, as you know, Superman is my character. A character that helped me through lots of dark days as a child, being bullied because I was dyslexic and shy and I had no confidence and I had mental health issues. It was very hard for me growing up. I had wonderful family, wonderful siblings, wonderful mum and dad, very supportive, but I had so many issues. I still do. And Superman helped me through them. Superman the movie and Superman 2 and even Superman 3 helped me through those dark days as a child. So Superman's always been there for me. And then when I was struggling for cash and living in a bedsit with a bunch of other blokes I didn't know, and I was in my room and I was scared to leave it because I didn't know these blokes, Smallville was there for me. Superman's always been there for me when I've needed him. And Superman needs us. Again, Superman needs James Gunn to make him great. So it doesn't matter whether you like Gunn or not. If he makes a good movie, I'm going to credit him. Because as I said, he has got such a challenge on his hands, everyone. This is so difficult. And everyone is relying on him. The Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders. David Zaslav. They're relying on him to save them. Hollywood is relying on James Gunn to save them. So in the next 2 years, there's going to be a lot of talk. We're going to see a lot of on-set pictures. We're going to see David Corenswet in his costume. That's going to be very exciting. There's going to be grown men and grown women arguing whether or not a fictional character should be wearing those trunks. I don't mind if he does, and I don't mind if he doesn't. Either way, I'll be happy. I just hope they either design a beautiful costume that looks right on the body of David Corenswet, or they take one of the great designs from the comics, something that's never really been done in a movie. I really like Henry Cavill's costume. I think it's probably the best costume we've seen in Superman live action, although Christopher Reeve's costume was pretty cool for that time. Of course, Christopher Reeve made it look good because he really bulked up as well, and he looks great in that costume, although, you know, the trunks are a bit too big, but apart from that, it still works today. So as I say, there's a lot of exciting things to come with Superman Legacy, but this is a movie that has to be successful, has to bring in the money, and you need to bring in the young generation who have turned their backs on the movie theatre. Why have they turned their back on these superhero films they once watched? Because the passion and the craft out of movie making has gone. It's gone because the priority of Hollywood was politics, propaganda, and extremism. The craft left the industry, so the consumer left the industry. Hollywood has been hit hard in the box office this year because the consumer has said, we are not stupid. We don't care how you market these movies. What you say, we can see what you're doing. We are not stupid. We understand what's going on here. Hollywood is dying from its own hands. And this film, Superman Legacy, about a character who launched the superhero genre of movies, can save Hollywood once again, as it did in 1978. But he is a very difficult character to perfect in a jaded generation, in a jaded time where people go on social media platforms and argue about everything. Every fucking thing is a war. An opinion shouldn't be a call to war, but it is the hatred we've had between Snyderverse stans and so-called real DC fans about Corenswet's casting and Rachel Brosnahan's casting actually hasn't been as bad because the casting has been really good and really solid. Their casting isn't controversial, and there's been very few things that the Snyderverse stans have been able to label against them. And a lot of the stuff they've labelled against them is bullshit. But we are getting a Superman Legacy movie. I'm very excited to see how it works out. But I understand the pressure James Gunn is under.